Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over an article by the News Observer which talks about Republican incumbent Senator Thom Tillis kicking off his 2016 re-election campaign, and something I think is going to be very interesting and important to talk about going into 2026 for the next 2 years. So Thom Tillis, the Republican incumbent senator from North Carolina, the article begins by saying, if anyone had any doubts left that Thom Tillis would run for re-election, he's ending all speculation this week. 20 senators plan to host a kickoff campaign event for the North Carolina senior senator in Washington on last Wednesday, marking the official start to his 2026 Senate campaign. The Republicans' re-election campaign has been one of the worst kept secrets, but even Tillis had doubts at times about whether he would run again. He said, quote, "Every cycle I go through a process," Tillis told McClatchy exclusively Tuesday afternoon. "For me, it's, do you have the kind of support you need? Are you going to have the economic policy support? Are you going to have the support of the administration? All those things have to weigh into it. I don't go after things I think I may win," Tillis said. "I go after things I think I will win, and I think we're going through that process." He added that against all odds, his team arrived at the conclusion that this would be a winnable race. And that's a position he has been in before. Winning in North Carolina. Tillis, 64, was first elected to the Senate in 2014 when he ran against the late Senator Kay Hagan, the Democratic incumbent. Hagan held a financial advantage over Tillis, and Republicans weren't initially confident they could pull off a win. But in the end, Tillis did prevail and win the race. He would go on to win re-election in 2020 against Cal Cunningham, a Democratic lawyer from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. At first, Tillis, who didn't have the favor of Trump's most extreme supporters, seemed vulnerable in the toss-up race against Cunningham. But a scandal rocked the end of Cunningham's campaign, and Tillis ultimately won. Both races became the most expensive Senate races at the time in U.S. history. The Tillis-Cunningham race cost close to $300 million, and Tillis believes the 2026 campaign will far exceed that number. Two names have been consistently floated as potential running against Tillis on the Democratic ticket. Outgoing Representative Willie Nickel, a Democrat from Cary. I believe that is the 13th representative seat, but I could be wrong. I'll check that later. He has announced his intention that he would like to run for this seat. Outgoing Governor, Democrat of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, who wants to stay in public office but is term limited and cannot stay on as governor, has been floated through his campaign strategist, Morgan Jackson, told McClatchy Tuesday that Cooper won't make a decision about his future until 2025. But obviously, political talk saying I won't make a decision until next year means, at very least, the candidate's probably considering it. "I think we're going to set the record for most expensive race again," Tillis told McClatchy. "I would guess that the all-in cost will be somewhere close to $500 million, and that each of the candidates' committees will probably have to raise between $50 and $75 million, and the remainder will be 501c for 527s, the alphabet soup of outside interest." And it does mention now some reaching across the aisle Tillis has done. As Tillis talked to this reporter, he made his way into the Senate office building and Senate floor for a vote. Many senators often walk in, vote, and leave, not Tillis. He's found lingering on the floor, talking with colleagues and making deals. Tillis is known on Capitol Hill for his ability to reach across the aisle to accomplish lofty legislative goals that have at times put him at odds with his party back home. Including back in 2023, the North Carolina Republican Party censured Tillis for violating the party's platform for positions he took on the LGBTQ legislation and gun laws. In 2022, Tillis voted to protect under federal law interracial and same-sex marriages. The move seemed like a large departure from that of his time working in the North Carolina House, where as Speaker, Tillis helped lead in 2012 the push for a ban on same-sex marriage. By 2015, however, he was working to codify rights for same-sex couples to government resources in states that did not recognize their unions. Tillis also caught the party's ire in 2022 for working with Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, on the largest piece of gun reform in 30 years. Their bill tackled red flag laws, mental health, and juvenile records, and came in direct response to a shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, that left 19 students and 2 teachers dead, injured, and another 17. He said, quote, "I think everybody's got to go back and look at the policy," Tillis said. "All that was said about it at the time, all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that hasn't materialized, and a lot of positive things have. Every 6 years, you got to go back and cut through the narrative and talk about specifics." He added that he has a long conservative record of ratified bills he can compare against anyone who tries to run against him, which leads into a very interesting question. Will someone try and primary Tillis? North Carolina's far-right Republicans have been actively recruiting for someone to primary Tillis, and it's been playing out on social media. Names that have been floated include President-elect Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, who's a native of Wilmington, North Carolina, but looks like she is not registered to vote in North Carolina and is now registered in Florida, and potentially could be the person to replace Florida Senator Marco Rubio, which I did do a video on a few days ago, if you want more information about that. Outgoing Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's name has come up as well, though he did just lose a very, very landslided governor election just in November after a lot of allegations came out against him that really were awful, and he has no chance of winning that. So even if he won the primary, he has a virtually 0% chance at winning a general election, so I don't think Robinson would do that. And if Robinson did run against Tillis, I doubt Republicans in a primary would likely support him after losing the Democrat Josh Stein by 15 points. Still, Tillis' opponents will be watching him closely over the next few months as President Joe Biden transfers power to Trump. Trump has chosen many controversial nominees in their eyes to help lead his administration that needs Senate approval, and so far Tillis has signaled he will support Trump's picks if they're approved through the committee. So that'll be something that Republicans will have to be watching very close. And in closing on the article, Brent Woodcock's staffer for the Senate leader, Phil Berger, had some advice for trying to primary Tillis, saying, quote, "The same morons who brought you Mark Robinson now want to primary Tillis, so Republicans can lose another winnable statewide race." Woodcock's posted on social media, quote, "Make sure y'all don't trip over all the bodies of the people who've tried to take him out before." Berger endorsed Robinson in the primary for governor. Tillis told McClatchy he's not worried about defending his conservative bona fides. Last quote of the article, "What somebody else who is frustrated with me needs to worry about is whether or not they can put somebody here that's going to be an empty suit and not get anything done up here." Tillis said, "It's difficult to produce results, but again, you want to talk about the Second Amendment, you want to talk about life, you want to talk about property rights, you want to talk about due process. Look at my record. That's what I'll be reminding people again if I get an opponent from the right." So this article covers a lot of ground and there's a lot of interesting things, but the main crux of it all, the most important thing is North Carolina, Thom Tillis. This is going to be, again, one of the closest Senate races every time he's up for re-election. What I'm going to do now is look at the past races he was up. So he's up in 2026, which means he was last up in 2020. In this race, Thom Tillis defeated Cal Cunningham by about 1.7% in a very, very close race. And it is important to note, Thom Tillis likely was saved in this race due to the Libertarian candidate getting 3.13% and another independent candidate getting 1.24%. Tillis did not break 50% of the vote in 2020 despite being the Republican incumbent, which is certainly a very vulnerable situation. Yes, Tillis did win by 1.7%. I believe at the same time Donald Trump won North Carolina by 1.3%, but still that is worth noting. Tillis was first elected back in 2014. It was a Republican wave year, but he did have to go up against a Democratic incumbent who was also recently, sadly, passed away. So, of course, condolences to her family on that. But Tillis was able to defeat the Democratic incumbent by about 1.6%. And yes, even though it was a great Republican year against a Democratic incumbent, it was still a very close race at 1.6%. So based on Tillis' track record, yes, he is 2-0 in these Senate races. He's yet to win a Senate race by more than 2 points, though, as well. So what does that mean for 2026? Well, one thing's for certain, barring someone like Laura Trump coming out to primary Thom Tillis or President Trump getting heavily involved in this primary, it's more likely than not, that Thom Tillis is going to be the Republican nominee again. Republicans are capable of putting up another candidate to primary him, but I'm not 100% sure if that person will win without the full-on support of President Trump. So going off the assumption that I think Thom Tillis will be the nominee, which is what I do think he will be, he's going to be facing a general election in 2026, which 2026, by all accounts, based on history, should be a pretty good Democratic year, seeing as the Republicans have control of the presidency, the Senate, and a very narrow control in the House. Typically, the party that is not in charge does very well in the off-year elections. So 2026 should be a good year for the Democrats. And it is worth noting, though, that it's not all doom and gloom for the Republicans in North Carolina. That was New Hampshire, looking at the 2024 presidential race, Donald Trump did just win statewide by about 3%, 51% to 48% in the 2024 presidential election. This is where polls were showing it to be a very close race, and some Democrats in the final polling averages actually started to give Kamala Harris the state of North Carolina, feeling very confident in that state. I did mention in my preview breakdown of North Carolina a trend where the polls seem to show a very close race in North Carolina, and yet there always seems to be a hidden Republican vote, both in the presidential election years and in the midterm years. And so far, that happened in 2024, 2022, 2020, 2018, and 2016. I do not see a reason why I don't think there'll be another hidden Republican vote in North Carolina in 2026. So much to say, I would not be shocked one bit going into Election Day 2026, showing the Democratic candidate leading Thom Tillis in the polls for the Senate race, where at the same time, Thom Tillis may pull off a win. I'm not sure 100% that's going to happen, but based on the history of North Carolina, at very least, the race could be tied or the Democrat could have a narrow win. Every Democrat's going to say Thom Tillis is going to lose. Every Republican is going to be cautiously optimistic that Tillis could pull out a win, but I would not be shocked one bit to see Tillis end up winning because that seems to be the track record with North Carolina. Which is at the presidential level, North Carolina has not voted for a Democrat since 2008. At the governor level, they've almost consistently elected Democrats, so that could be a counter argument to that point. At the Senate level, Kay Hagan was the last Democrat to be elected from North Carolina, and the race was up in 2014, so 6 years before that would have been 2008, a very good Democratic year. So I have some doubts if Democrats will actually be able to flip the seat, but the one thing Democrats do have going for them is so far they do have a strong pool of potential candidates, including, yes, Willie Nickel, the outgoing U.S. representative from North Carolina's 13th district, but also the outgoing governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper is someone who has now won two governor elections on the same ballot as Donald Trump, both times when Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina. He'll be going up against Thom Tillis, who, again, has not won a Senate race by more than 2% margin of victory in the state. And it sounds like in 2022, without Cunningham's late-breaking scandal, Cunningham could have been in a position either to win that race or be very, very close to winning it. So if Cooper does run, the Democrats have probably the best candidate they could run in North Carolina, going up against Tillis, who by all accounts is by far the two Republican senators in North Carolina, the weaker of the two. The question is, does this all translate? Because there's a lot of paths here where it all sounds like very good news for the Democrats. Tillis isn't exactly loved by all members of his party, and there seems to be a lot of momentum on the Democratic side in North Carolina. The one thing that I think right now is holding and keeping Tillis in a strong position is he'll likely have a fundraising advantage given his incumbency factor. People in North Carolina have elected him statewide twice now, but is it going to be enough to hold on? I do think this is going to be one of the closest races in the United States. Tillis' track record, as he has won, so I can't say it's bad, but it's not as good as some of the other Republican candidates. Right now, for how I start this race out, I do start this race out as tilt Republican. I do think Tillis will win if he does by under 1%, but I would not be shocked to see Roy Cooper run for this race and win it as well, seeing as it's so very, very close. But if Republicans are losing the Senate seat in 2026, that can mean one of two things. Either the Democrats are having an absolutely amazing night, or Republican voters are just not turning out for Thom Tillis in the way they would for Donald Trump in their presidential year. Those same type of voters are just not turning out for him in a midterm year. So at the end of the day, could I see North Carolina actually flipping to the Democrats in 2026? I could. I'm narrowly saying I don't think that will happen. I do think that right now the race starts out as tilt Republican for my ratings, but I would not be shocked to see that one bit. Still, we're going to have 2 years to go watching this race, but this is something at very least Republicans need to start monitoring, because there's going to be a very close race in North Carolina, like there was in 2020, like there was in 2014, and this is going to be one the Republicans can't take for granted if they want to win this state, because this very well could be a Democratic flip that many Republicans could potentially be blindsided by. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned, because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day, so I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.